After 2 years with my old machine, it was finally time for something new that could chew through my demanding video edits, but also offered a great overall package to take on the go or to university. The obvious choice would have of course been a MacBook Pro, but as a Premiere editor I wanted to give Nvidia's new hardware encoding a shot. So, did I choose the right creator laptop with the Dell XPS 15? I know this took a while, but this is my review after 3 months with it. I think Dell did a tremendous job with the redesign of the XPS line. The top and bottom case are made from one single piece of aluminium with large chamfered edges, and the laptop just screams premium every time you look at it. The aluminium is also soft to the touch, so the laptop feels quite nice. Even details like the feet that span the length of the laptop look great. I of course put a carbon fiber D-brand skin on the top, together with my logo to customize it, but even without that it looks quite sharp. I just wish that Dell would have switched their logo with the XPS one on the bottom that looks a lot nicer, then I also wouldn't have had a reason to cover it up. What you do have to know is that at over 2 kilograms, this is not a light machine. It definitely gets heavy in a backpack, but thanks to its compact size it also just feels very dense because of that heft. The only thing I find a bit concerning is the exposed display cable at the hinge. If that gets punctured, it's done. I/O is of course a bit more limited this year, but I actually like that they went all in on Thunderbolt. You get 2 fully fledged Thunderbolt 3 Type-C ports on the left side with 40 gigabits of transfer speed, and of course support for full speed charging and display output. The Type-C port on the other side is not Thunderbolt 3, but actually just USB 3.1 Gen 2 for 10 gigabits a second max. For most of what you do, this shouldn't really matter though, as you can still charge the laptop at full speed through it, and it also supports 4K 60Hz display output. Just bear in mind that Thunderbolt docks or external GPUs won't work with the port on the right. What I really like is that Dell also included a full-size SD card reader on the XPS 15. As a content creator working with SD cards for my camera pretty much constantly, it's a godsend not having to use an adapter you can forget at home. This was actually one of the reasons that made me not pick the MacBook Pro. And of course there's still a headphone jack for latency-free audio. And if you do need a full-size HDMI or USB, Dell does bundle an adapter in the box that would cost you extra with Apple. The great design also continues when you open up the laptop. The carbon fiber on the palm rest looks very good and also has a nice soft touch finish. Greasy fingerprints are easy enough to wipe off, but the inside of the laptop collects dust like crazy. That especially goes for the speaker grills, which unfortunately already have some blocked holes on my unit. What bothers me a bit too is that the hinge doesn't go very far back. This isn't a problem when working on a desk, but when you prop it up on your legs, this can be a bit annoying, whether you're trying to type something or watching a movie in bed. This is definitely something Dell should fix with the next iteration. That's because those speakers really make you want to use this laptop for watching movies. They're really loud enough to fill a room for sure. And they have super clear highs with deep bass and pretty remarkable stereo separation. These are probably the best speakers you can find on any Windows laptop still. They also have large grills both next to the keyboard facing you and on the bottom sides, so no matter if you have the laptop open or docked like I often do, they still sound great. Dell does bundle their own audio profile with the laptop in a software that's called Max Audio, and without it the speakers don't even sound half as good. Unfortunately that's a different story for headphones, which sound like garbage with a default audio profile, so you always have to turn this on and off in the software, which gets a bit annoying. But of course for a great content consumption and creation experience you not only need great audio but also a great screen. Fortunately that's not really an issue here. And of course those super thin bezels on all sides make up a big chunk of what makes this laptop look so good. If you look from below, you can't even see the bottom bezel. More manufacturers should just embrace this and use the thick bezel they usually have below their screens for more screen real estate. 16:10 displays like on the XPS 15 are way better than 16:9 anyway. That little extra vertical space does wonders for editing text documents, seeing more of web pages, or giving you more room for timeline tracks in Adobe Premiere. So apart from just looking better, it's also more useful. This version of the XPS 15 doesn't have a touchscreen since I didn't want to spend the €400 upgrade tax for the 4K touch panel. And while I was a bit concerned about missing it coming from a touchscreen convertible, I'm actually quite glad I went this way. That's because the touchscreen is glossy, whereas the non-touch version has a matte panel. And that really helps a lot when you're sitting on the beach wanting to get some work done in bright sunlight. This screen is super visible outdoors, thanks to that matte panel, but also its high brightness. So doing work outside is no issue at all. What I did find though is that the auto brightness, yes this laptop does have an ambient light sensor, can be a bit hit and miss sometimes, with the screen being too dark until you manually turn it up. 1920 by 1200 I found to be plenty sharp for a 15-inch screen. I never really missed 4K here. When I do need more pixels for editing, I can just hook it up to an external monitor. But for editing, the screen on the laptop is also suited really well with 100% sRGB coverage. One thing that also doesn't make me miss a touchscreen is the trackpad. It's huge, which means that you can get to any corner of the screen with one swipe, but it also has great palm rejection, so the size doesn't become an issue while typing. Multi-finger gestures work perfectly and tracking is amazing too. This is especially great for timeline scrubbing. It's not force touch, but you can click pretty much anywhere, and while it's not glass either, it still feels very premium. This is probably the best trackpad you can find on any Windows laptop, second only to the MacBooks. And the good news continues with the keyboard. The keys have very great travel and a nice tactile feel. Typing on it is a pleasure, and it's of course also backlit. And don't worry, I of course have the European ISO layout that needs space for more keys. The US version doesn't have a short enter key. The only thing that took me some getting used to is the fingerprint reader in the top right where the delete key normally is. But you get used to that rather quickly. And that fingerprint sensor is fast and reliable too. Much better than on some other Windows laptops where it doesn't work half the time. I just wish they put it on the side, since you could then also use it when the laptop is docked and closed. Apart from that fingerprint sensor, you also have Windows Hello facial recognition for fast sign-ins by just sitting in front of the laptop. And that's despite the small bezels. The webcam itself is fine for video calls, but nothing special. It's not complete garbage, but especially in challenging lighting it can struggle. I took a mid-tier configuration of the XPS with the 6-core 10750H CPU and GTX 1650 Ti graphics card. I went with the model with only 512GB of NVMe storage and 16GB of DDR4 RAM, because fortunately Dell lets you upgrade those things. So you don't need to pay them more upfront for more RAM and storage, but can just buy a larger SSD or more RAM yourself for cheaper. And that's what I did. The 512GB SSD is enough for me, since I store everything important on my own NAS server, but the RAM in this machine has been upgraded to 32GB, and I am even thinking about upping that to 64. But the fact that you can do this is awesome and something you don't see that often anymore these days, especially not in a unibody design. And it's also another prime reason to pick this over the MacBook Pro 16, because you can save so much money by upgrading it yourself. But what do all of these numbers actually translate to in real life? Well, as I said, I came from an Ultrabook, which had a quad-core i7, an MX150 GPU, and 16GB of RAM. Apart from typing essays for uni, browsing the web, or watching a movie from time to time, I mostly use my laptop as a workhorse for video editing and design work. And what is important to know is that the GTX 1650 in here is the cheapest new card you can get that has Nvidia's new NVENC encoder that is capable of hardware encoding in Creative Cloud. This means that having a GTX 1650 Ti versus not having a dedicated GPU is an upgrade orders of magnitude bigger than going from this card to an RTX. I know you want to see numbers, but I don't think synthetic benchmarks mean a lot. It's much more important to know how this thing performs in real-world video editing. And with that hardware encoder, this laptop renders 4K H.264 footage for YouTube faster than real time, even with the After Effects animations I always add taken into account. But for better comparability, I took those out of the sample project. A 5-minute 4K sample review video that would take over half an hour to render on my old laptop using software now takes 3 minutes and 22 seconds. That's a huge improvement and makes it much easier to just press render, check the final product and change something after the fact without having to waste almost another hour to render it again. And timeline performance is much better too. Even at full 4K resolution, smooth video playback and fast scrubbing is not an issue at all. My old laptop even struggled with 1/4 res. And scrubbing performance is an important thing to bear in mind anyway. You spend much more time on the timeline than rendering, and this is one of only very few laptops apart from the MacBook that do timeline scrubbing well. When just using the browser, the fans never kick in, so the laptop is completely silent. When editing video at full throttle, they definitely get loud, but I didn't find it to be especially annoying or worse than other laptops. I edit with headphones anyway, and it never bothers me. Thermals are of course high, this laptop will hit 100 degrees under load pretty quickly, also because the fans don't really turn on until then. But from what I heard, laptop chips are validated for that, so I don't think this will become an issue for you in terms of reliability before you would replace this with something new anyway. While video editing, CPU thermals mostly sit around 75 degrees, with GPU thermals around 80 degrees even while rendering. The XPS 15 does also have AX Wi-Fi, but the Wi-Fi range isn't really that great from my experience. Battery life of course varies massively depending on what you do. The battery in here is 86 watt-hours on the model with a dedicated GPU, and that's pretty large for a laptop of this size. With that, you can get a 2-digit number of hours out of it when only browsing the web, typing documents, or watching video. I think that's pretty solid because it means taking it to a long day of uni and leaving the charger at home isn't a problem. But of course, when you start doing more heavy stuff like editing video on the go, this can go down to 3 hours very quickly. Overall, I'm very happy with the battery life on this machine though. I didn't feel it to be a constraint, and I think that's what's most important. What is also a big plus in this regard is that the XPS 15 uses USB-C to charge, so you can just top it up with an external battery bank if you need more juice. When you buy an XPS 15 from Dell's website, they give you half off accessories, so I got the 65-watt external battery for about 50 euros, which I think is quite a good deal. It gives you almost another full charge at up to 65 watts, and even works as a USB hub at the same time, which I think is genius. And of course you can also use it to charge your phone or anything else. With 65 watts, it takes about 3 hours to fully charge the laptop. That also goes for the extra 65 watt adapter that I got that is much smaller and lighter than the one that comes with the laptop. Great for taking it on the go. That's of course not fast, but it's fast enough to keep it topped up even while doing heavy work, so I'm fine with carrying the smaller adapter. The one that comes with the laptop is much bigger and heavier and thus permanently lives at my desk. But at 130 watts, it also only takes about 1.5 hours to fully charge, with 50% in only a little more than half an hour. That's definitely fast enough, and I also like that they stuck to USB-C despite the wattage being above USB-C spec. It's a bit unfortunate that Dell removed the charge indicator from this version, but the XPS 15 does actually have an RGB LED strip on the front that tells you when it's charging and lights up green when it's done. I think they could do more with that though. Lastly, I want to quickly talk about my experience with Dell support. My laptop came out of the box with a damaged LCD that had permanent white marks on it, so I of course called to get it replaced. And this is where I think the slightly lower price versus the MacBook Pro 16 really comes into play. With an Apple product, you just walk into the store and get help. I, on the other hand, had to be on the phone for an hour talking to 5 different people who just told me someone else was responsible until I found a person that would actually work on fixing my problem. That's definitely not what you expect from paying for premium support. When they finally did schedule a repair though, it was done in only 20 minutes on site without having to ship it somewhere, which is at least better than other Windows laptop manufacturers. I just think they should also give premium customers a dedicated line to call. But at least the additional accidental damage insurance you can also get is much cheaper than Apple Care at only 20 euros for a year. I have seen other comments talking about this laptop calling it the jack of all trades but master of none, but I don't think that's true. It is true that this isn't the highest performance laptop you can get, not even for the money. But it's the highest performance laptop you can buy that doesn't sacrifice anything else. This laptop is a master at design, at build quality, the speakers and the keyboard and trackpad are the best you can get on any Windows machine, period, and that screen is just awesome as well. And as I said before, as a creator, the main thing to look for is that Nvidia encoder, which this one has. Beyond that, the performance benefits start to diminish. So what you get here is a machine with everything it takes for great performance in editing that also nails everything else. When going with a gaming laptop, you might get slightly faster speed, but also a less color accurate screen, worse keyboard and trackpad, a less classy design, and so on and so forth. And the MacBook Pro? Well, at least for Premiere, this is faster, has an SD card slot, and it also has the potential to be about 30% cheaper if you go for at least 32GB of RAM, since you can just go for a cheaper config and upgrade it yourself. With the MacBook Pro, you have to pay the 500 euros Apple charges you. It's still expensive, but if you don't need macOS or Apple's amazing support, I think this is actually the best creator laptop you can get, with better value to boot. If you enjoyed this video, you know which buttons to press, don't forget to press that follow button on Twitter, and don't forget your mask when you leave the house. I'm Brian, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.